and welcome to ZED Talks. I am joined today with a new buddy of mine who's become a pretty good buddy when we had a nice tequila in Dallas together recently.
Best
I'm
friend.
besties. I had tequila and I think you might have had whiskey, but this is Dominic Le Fort, founder of Shrlock. And if you don't know who Shrlock is, you're going to get to know who Shrlock is. So I'm going to let Dominic introduce himself. Over to you, Dominic. And before I do that, actually, I would say that today's topic, we're having a little pre-chat before we get live and go live. We were talking about building something which is almost intangible. It's based on what people want, but we're not in their mind. And so when we're building something in someone's mind and they use language that might not mean the same things we do, how does that work? It's a real interesting topic. So welcome, Dominic. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I think the topic is so needed because certainly when you're launching a business, you can feel like you're flying blind. And I'll share a little bit later. We launched software specifically for HR consultants to manage their business, but that's not actually the first product that we built. And I think it's a perfect tie-in to some of what this discussion is going to be, because what people say they want and what they actually want aren't always totally aligned. And that can be really frustrating for you as an entrepreneur because you kind of need to read between the lines, ask the right questions and make inferences. And sometimes what people say doesn't always match what they really need. And so I think it's a really important conversation.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And for anybody listening, whether it's on replay tomorrow, next week, next year, whenever it might be, I think there's a call to action here, which I'm going to shout it out really early, because I think that we may use British English as a common language. And I'm talking specifically, I'm going to use the example of between British and American. Okay, so I've spent most of my life in America and I've spent a lot of time growing up there. I have a home there. So I'm saying this from a place of love. But when we look at these two entities as countries and we look at the people that reside in there that have different skin tone, different eye color, different height, we are under the misconception that we often speak the same language. Not even Europeans and Americans, but Americans, European, whatever. If we speak English and we use the same words, I would dare say that they are not interpreted in the same way. And we expect when we go to somewhere like Asia, where there is a very big difference in how we look, that the language will be very different and that they will apply a very, very different meaning. But actually, that couldn't be further from the truth in terms of looking at British English, if you like, or American English or Australian English, because we apply words and we don't always mean what we say. And that is so fascinating. Yeah. So that's what we're going to get into.
It's so funny you mentioned this. I was just on a call Friday, and I was talking to someone in the UK. And here in the United States, when we say we're taking a second look at something, well, say we're taking a look underneath the hood of the car. No, she said, I'll take a look underneath the bonnet. And I was like, of course it's bonnet. It's so British. But yeah, it's so, because like you have these little like isms or sayings where, people are saying, they could be saying the same thing in just totally different ways, or they could be saying something and just meaning something completely different.
Totally. And so in our sort of pre-show, and I guess it is a show, in a pre-show chat, we were talking about that so Shrlock, for context, and we'll talk a little bit more about Shrlock, what is, and maybe even talk about what inspired you to start this journey. But ultimately, Dominic is looking for information from specifically HR consultants, because that's what Shrlock serves. So perhaps you can give us some context on Shrlock and what you are looking for and what you're building, what you're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, so I'll back up just a little bit to sort of what prompted Shrlock in general before I explain, what it is, because it definitely was an evolution. I used to work in the HR department as a learning and development professional, and then ended up working in HR tech for many years. And so just after a long career in and around the HR space, I definitely had a ton of HR consulting friends, people who are in-house and wanting to do consulting. And a lot of them were reaching out to me, who eventually landed in the marketing department with questions about, how do I find new clients? How do I, market my services? How do I do X, Y, Z? And these requests were happening often enough that I knew my HR consulting friends were struggling. And that for me, it was like, I like to help. And so I don't think I necessarily went searching for a problem. a problem was just sort of staring me in the
Yeah.
face, and I was just crazy enough to say, let me try and tackle it. But the first iteration of Sherlock was, I think, really more focused on tackling some of the marketing challenges that so many of my HR consulting friends were facing in terms of finding the right clients, knowing how to turn prospects into paying clients. And so that was the earlier iteration of what we built. And we basically had an entire preliminary product ready to go. And I started going back into for a final round of user research. And I said, great, how many new clients do you want? And a lot of the consultants I talked to were like, oh my gosh, amazing. Maybe one or two. And I was like, what do you mean one or two? I thought you said you wanted more clients. And so there was a huge disconnect between, this wanting more clients and then this sort of underlying problem that wasn't communicated of, I don't really have a great way of managing too many clients at one time. Or, if I were to
Oh,
manage too many clients, I would be sacrificing the quality of service, and that doesn't sit right with me. And so that's where we sort of ran into this like underlying problem underneath the bonnet, hood of the car, if you will, of there needed to be a way to manage the business more effectively before you could talk about scaling it, because you can't scale without having the right systems in place. Otherwise, you're just scaling chaos, right?
totally. And that makes so much sense. And I'm so glad that you've stumbled on kind of like, or what it feels like you stumbled on the root cause. So
Mhm.
there was most things people know to some degree what well, they do know what they're experiencing, but what the rationale of why they're experiencing it isn't always at the surface. It's always
Right.
much deeper. And you mentioned something earlier on, which is asking the right questions. And I think that that is like nail on the head kind of thing. I should put it here, nail on the head. um and so what is it now that you're seeking? So Sherlock's been established for how long? How far in the journey are you?
Yeah, so we launched our product sort of end of April this past year. So we've been fully live for several months now. And today, certainly we've been on a journey to get to where we are now, but today we're very much so an operating system for either solo consultants or HR consulting teams. We just brought on a new team of 25 consultants. And I think with what we've really designed Sherlock for is helping consultants really keep track of client information more effectively, easily
Mm.
create and manage projects, because your entire work is based on deliverables and making sure you're delivering on client needs, tracking your time so you're able to get paid for the work that you do, and then send invoices so that clients can provide payment. And so we really focus on some of those business critical tools and bringing them together in one space. And so that's what Sherlock is today. I would say it's a real back office operating system for consultants with the goal of boosting efficiency so you can take on more clients.
Yeah, I mean that is so. I was wrapping my tiny brain around this earlier on that the human the human is also a machine, right? The human has a mechanical aspect to it, which is super intelligent. And what we can't do is, there's a capacity, right? So we need capacity planning as humans, and we often trip ourselves up with over promising, under delivering, and because we want to say yes, we're traditionally people pleasers, especially in HR, and
Mhm.
we take on more work than we don't capacity plan very well. And I suppose that disconnect, I'm probably stuck on that a little bit, really, because there is a disconnect in how many clients you can realistically take, okay, as a consultant. Let's even broaden it out from just HR, but any consultant. Because if you're consulting and you are the business, you have to deliver. And so there is a time component, which is, and this is leading into the tracking time, which I find magnificent in Sherlock. Admittedly, I haven't been in there recently, but I need to, because I think this is very valid. First of all, lots of consultants will track their time like lawyers, which is by the minute. And
Mhm.
I think that we can be more intelligent than that and say over tracking time a longer period, we can understand capacity planning much better and deeply, and actually then move into more retained work, which is where we should be, I believe,
Mhm.
to be able to budget, to be able to capacity plan, to be able to do also. And even if we want to grow a team and have quadruple, if we want to move from having 6 clients ourselves to 12 to 24 to 50, create an empire, whatever it is, we have to have smart systems.
Right.
And Excel, Word, Google Sheets, Docs are brilliant. And of course, then we've got ChatGPT that can do an awful lot, but it just doesn't streamline in the way that
Mhm.
an enterprise would. Because I look at Sherlock like a bit of an ERP, if I'm really honest. That's what
Okay.
I look at. And I think it's, for me, it is an enterprise that resource plans and has all the functionality and some stuff in it, which you're doing some really exciting things. So that's my interpretation, by the way. That's not necessarily others. But I think that the smart systems, we're entering into a period of what I see with AI specifically, that lots of people are grasping and grabbing multiple different tools, and they're going to get into an absolute pickle about,
Mhm.
what tool does what. And so I think we're going to come into a bit of a limelight where Sherlock's going to have a nice spotlight kind of like put sprinkled all on it, saying like, this is your one-stop shop for, yeah,
Yeah.
fingers crossed, right? Because that's what we're aiming for. So
Sure.
one-stop shop for kind of a consultant, and maybe even more than HR consultants. It could be a business consultant, but right now I know that that's who you serve. So what is it that you're hoping to achieve in this next round of feedback or research? Are you going for seeding? Is it for well, I'm assuming it's for product creation and roadmap, technical roadmap for what's to come. But what's on your mind? What are you going to do with this data? Where's it going? What are you going to do with it?
Yeah. So I think where we're at right now, that we've been live for, a little over half a year, we're sort of back at that point of doing additional user research for that what comes next. And certainly we have conversations internally around what that might looks like. And having already been burned, I'm now like, well, what are the right questions to ask so that we don't, build the wrong thing? And so I think this is where you run into a situation where, based on what we have right now, a lot of users might ask for features that they would see in maybe some other general purpose platforms. Like something we don't have right now is proposal and contracting, right? Or e-signature, right? Like that's something that you can do through DocuSign. I think Google has its own e-sign functionality. Like, oh, I would love that just all in one. So that's something like, okay, great, but how many clients are you really realistically signing per year? If
Mm.
it's 3 new clients per year, that the efficiency gains likely aren't going to be as dramatic as maybe an AI tool that can help, interpret what clients need support, or might, have predictive intelligence that says, hey, you should reach out to so and so. They just lost headcount, 3 employees in the last 2 months. And so, finding it, the new unlock for us is like, where can we achieve the greatest efficiency gains? And that doesn't necessarily happen with each of the product requests that we receive. And so I think that early experience we had of understanding that there can be a disconnect between what someone is asking for and what they really need. That's not to say you never listen, but I think when you say like, if the primary pain is efficiency, how can we deliver on that best? And looking at what's on the table and say which of these are going to achieve that goal. So that's where we are right now. We've built a platform that definitely boosts efficiency for consultants, and it's how you take that a step further. And so we've got a lot of consultants who are populating our system with data. We would love to build AI tools on top of that data. And I think you said something that is so accurate, is a lot of consultants run their businesses with sticky notes and spreadsheets, and you can't run good AI on top of your back of a napkin notes, right? It doesn't see
Right.
it, and so having a structured, organized data center for all the clients that you serve enables some of those really fun, exciting tools like AI on top of the information you already have access to. And so that's where we are at right now as we close out this year and plan for 2026 is, how do we take the insights that we've already gained and apply them in future development?
It's I was, as you're talking, and you know that I love you. You know this because we've already had
Likewise.
this kind of like discussion. We're like crush. And I like there's the hearts.
The
So
hearts
I
are that's
always
fun.
love. Is it going to do? It's not going to do it for me, is it?
No, no.
God, is it only one way?
I'm really
Right.
jealous.
There you go. I've got a heart for both of us, and I love talking to you
Yeah.
because we talk. There you go. Maybe it will.
No love.
Anyway, I feel it. I feel it. Um,
Mm.
so as I love talking to you because we talk very similar language, and I love your articulation. I think that what's going through my mind is actually really going back. Is that anyone listening to this, and there will be a plethora of people that listen to this that are in-house HR people that may be thinking about making a leap into the unknown of HR consulting. And there's one big shift if you are doing that and you are listening to this, or you're very new to your consulting journey. Do not make this one mistake, because I've made this, and I made it 5 years ago, and it bit me on the arse royally 2 years into my journey, because I made money for 2 years. I made very good money for 2 years, superseded my corporate income, and then something changed called, people moving jobs. Other people that I relied on for business became consultants themselves. The world just changed. And so I was back to looking at my sticky notes. I mean, fucking sticky notes, excuse me. Well, I'm not going to use that, but F those sticky notes, because I have them
Right.
everywhere. And I thought that I could do business based on free tools. And I will
Mhm.
tell you this now. It is much easier if you are thinking about starting a business to have a database. And that
100%.
database will be what you build from. And guess what? You build with it. It is so difficult to migrate to another piece of technology when you are further in your journey. So,
Yes.
my invitation for anybody here that is thinking about, we are not talking thousands and millions of pounds for a smart system that can really help you and grow with you, and you grow with it. And I think that is something that is so misconception. I can deal with my Google Sheets and my sticky notes and all of this, kind of stuff that I've been used to in my corporate job. Guess what? You're not in a corporate job anymore. You're a business owner.
Yeah.
You need to be a business owner, and to run a business, you need efficiency, you need systems, you need to have a handle on everything, and you need to also be so much more than just a HR practitioner. I'm not saying just, that might rile a few people, that's okay. I'm not
No,
saying just.
it's so spot on, because I think the HR piece of an HR consulting business, that's the bread and butter that this person already feels comfortable with. It's all of the business stuff around it that becomes very uncomfortable. And I think you're spot on. There's so many people who they oftentimes will start consulting while they're still in house, right? To
Yes.
sort of give themselves a little bit of a base. And so they don't operationalize until way later, because the sticky notes and spreadsheets worked when they had one or two clients. And next thing you
Right.
know, they're trying to run a business with 5 or 6 clients, and everything's really scattered. They're not able to find anything. People that they talked to 4 months ago will never get a follow-up message because you're flying by the seat of your pants. And that's where I think you want to set yourself up for success earlier, by avoiding that chaos that will inevitably happen as it scales.
Totally. So avoiding the chaos, let's talk about that. So if you do have two clients or you're consulting on the side, your biggest mindset shift is thinking like a business owner, not a HR practitioner, right? So I think that is elephant in the room. It takes a while, and no one can go, boom, it's done, the switch is done. But I do think that there is absolutely a need. What will take you so far will be, I would call it Mickey Mouse stuff. You're dabbling around. You're not serious. If you don't want to be fatigued by all of the stuff that you've got to learn, and all of this paper notes and keeping a track and all of this up here, and don't want to become overwhelmed, because money is not going to flow in on a bi-weekly check or a monthly check. It's going to come in as your clients pay you, if they pay you on time. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost like there's another component here. And I'm probably being very provocative, because if anyone is listening to this that is thinking about taking that step, I want to drum it into you now. And there is no gain on my part, that you need smart tools, and you need to think about not having 20 different tools, but 2 or 3 very smart tools that help you manage your emails and your scheduling, manage your client base and your projects, and be able to, even those 2 things alone. even those two things alone, and an AI tool. You need an AI tool, of course. I can't
Right.
forget that.
100%.
Um, so I think there's the less is more, but having a very specific system that deals with what you deal with every day is a smart choice. So my plug is done. Dominic hasn't paid me any money to say that. I believe it. I believe it because I've done that.
If I could just add a little bit to that, I think
Yeah,
that so much of this conversation is focused on making your life easier as a solopreneur, which I think is a totally valid path. But there's I think another piece to that is worth mentioning, which is maybe you don't want to do this alone all the time, right? And
true.
so what does it mean to invite someone into your business to collaborate on clients with you or projects? And, with the way of the world being so remote, you can't invite them in on your sticky notes. You can't invite them in on your hand drawn, diagrams and notes like that. And that's where, making sure that you've structured your business in a way where you can bring in other collaborators allows you to set yourself up for a future where you can scale beyond yourself. And if you don't ever plan to do that, that's fine. You should still have those systems in place. But if you ever plan to, grow the team, maybe have, some admins that help support other parts of your business, or even bring on other consultants because you have so many clients that you can't personally service, you need to make sure the business is ready to be able to share client context, because otherwise you find yourself in a situation, a different form of chaos, right? Where you're bringing
Yeah.
someone onto the team and you're like, oh, shoot, let me upload this stack of paperwork, before you can actually get to know what this client is all about. And so I think that's just another angle that I always like to bring up, because oftentimes clients, even if you're not planning to have a bunch of other team members, clients will ask for services that you don't personally offer. And a lot of consultants, they don't do payroll admin, but clients will ask for that, or they don't do recruiting. And so what does it mean to bring on someone to help service one of your clients,
That's a really great point, right? So going back to the human, um, I think that community, and I was having this conversation earlier on with a number of people. Actually, it's been over the last few days. Community is really, 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 really important when you go on to do your own business. Whether you're a social animal or not, we need people. People need other people. Whether you're shy, you're introverted, whatever your jam is, whatever your rhythm and routine is, you need people. And I know more than ever that, and this is a bit of a vulnerable statement I'm about to say, I wasn't always very liked in my corporate job. Why? Because I got shit done. I got it done, but sometimes at the expense of driving people too hard, having things done in a way which is too speedy, okay, according to the business, but that's what they want, but they don't want, do want, don't want. And I guess in many ways, what that learning for me has been is that I need to make sure that I take people on the journey,
Mm-hmm.
and that being so speedy and so quick, especially with AI, there's a tendency to go very quick and not involve people, and that's where centralization of data is extremely important. My WhatsApp is pinging like mad because a client's
So
just
popular. I was going to say, wow.
Sue, sorry about that. I was like, move off of my desktop. And of course, it's that time of the night, isn't it? Why wouldn't they want me at 6 o'clock in the evening on a Monday? And of course now anyway. So we move on. So I think that the important part is around. You do need other people, and you need to be able to bring other people on the journey, and you need to be able to do that timely, sensibly, GDPR. So we're also obsessed about safety, security of information. That is why I believe in having great systems and
Mhm.
being able to impart that information, and also mitigating risk. If I needed to get data, it's actually a risk for me to have everything on sticky notes. What if there was a legal implication and I now have to go down a rabbit hole? And I have to say also, you do become more liable when you work for yourself because there is liability. And so to have everything and HR people should know this better than anybody else, that, that we need to be able to be tracked and traced and all of that good stuff. So it's really, really important. But yeah, you need people, the heart.
Mhm.
The heart also needs to be with people, isn't it? So inviting people into your business. She says, as I have quite a small team. How many people do you have on your team, Dominic?
We have 6 people now, which I will admit I am a handwritten note kind of person. Something about my brain just really works better once I've written something down. So I throw that out there because I recognize the tension that can happen for some people when it's a common way of working with yourself. But I've had to unlearn that because working with a team, I've realized like it has to be in our project management tool. Like people on the team need to have access. Otherwise, I become a blocker on projects when someone's asking for information that is sitting here on my desk, but really should be in the shared folder.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, and one that I just almost had a kerfuffle with my co-founder today, because I was like, "Are we using this project management tool? Not in Shrlock, but a project management tool for clients, our clients, and it's not up to date." And I'm like, "Well, who's not updating it?" And he was like, "You." And I was like, wait, what? What? Yeah, I was inputting all this information. It was like, yeah, you did it here and you didn't do it here. You needed to do it here and not there. And I was like, okay,
Right.
all right, sorry. But, it does make life easier. And I hadn't realized that I'd held up this team, because there's me barking, saying, I call it barking. Why have we not done this yet? It's been like since August that we've been talking about migrating these two websites. They're like, yeah, we're waiting for you.
Yeah.
Wait, what? What? No, you're not. It's all here. Yeah, well, where's here? So
Yeah.
it's that, team wise. But that's good. You've got six team. Okay, are they all located in the US of A?
No. So my co-founder is here in LA. I have some sales development people here in Los Angeles with me. But we do have two engineers, one in South America and one in Poland, which is great because that means we have engineering support 24/7.
Yes.
So that's been a nice change there. It certainly does make my life a little bit more kooky because messages happen at all times of day,
Yes. Yes.
all hours
That
of the
is
night.
That's the risk. So we just had a little WhatsApp interruption like happen here. That is
Mhm.
genuinely my life speaking over the 24-hour period.
Right.
And actually, let's touch on that a little bit. Right. So I've got a question for you. This is going to be left field, right? You ready?
Okay, let's go.
How do you manage the multiple time zones? How do you manage your time as because this is something that I ask myself regularly. Do I do a good job of it? I'm not sure. But what's your practice to keep you in balance with working on multiple time zones and being available? What's your availability? Do you leave your phone somewhere? Do you switch off? How do you manage?
So I think still learning. I'd be lying if I said I had it all figured out. I think that some things that have been helpful for me is waking up a lot earlier than I normally have. And so being not just up early, but being on, right? And I think like that was a big shift for me because I've historically never been a morning person. But now, even I have customers on the East Coast who they need support and they start their days at their 9 a.m., but that's 6 a.m. for me. So I can't be rolling out of bed at 6 a.m. and like, oh gosh, I need coffee. Like, no, I need to be on by the time that they're up. So waking up earlier has been important for me. I do find that like in the evenings are a good decompressed time. They tend to be a little bit calmer, but circa 10:30 p.m. through maybe like 12:31, like those could be messaging times. And so I think, finding where I can take my breaks more comfortably and still get in, some response time, like it's just compartmentalization. And I also have to remind myself, like I'm in a build mode right now. So some of what I'm doing today is not what necessarily tomorrow will look like.
Oh my gosh, you've hit upon something which is just put a finger in the socket of mine, which is build phase. So
Mm.
none of my friends are entrepreneurs. So I don't know if anyone would ever listen to this that was in my friendship group, because they don't do anything that I do. They have no idea about what it's like to run a business, have a business, they're paid employees, and I suspect they always will be. So they don't have the same headache. And they constantly tell me just to put the phone away, just to put it down, just to stop responding. Don't do this. And, I understand fully. But I
Mhm.
also feel like if you want to blitz scale your business, and there is a specific book called Blitz Scaling that I've mentioned before, blitz scaling is about going all in. There is no balance.
Mhm.
There is no, for a period of time, there is on and it's on. And there are 14-hour days on average, 12, 14-hour
Oh,
days.
100%.
Alex Formosi will talk about this. Dan Priestley will talk about this. Stephen Bartlett will talk about this. Simon Scribb will talk about this. They work incessantly. They work diligently. They also have somebody in the background that's helping in running the life, whether it's a home, whether it's a children, whether it's another, the cleaning, the cooking, the something. So balance becomes extremely important at certain stages of life as well. And I'm in my 50s. I'm not in my 20s. In my 20s, I was on. I could be on without 4 days of sleep. I can't do that anymore. So
Right.
the whole premise of, like how, what time do you go to bed, by the way?
Usually around like 12:31.
You did, so it wasn't, you were talking PM and not sorry, AM and not PM, and I was thinking, is he talking like in the day or like
Oh
evening?
no, I messed that up. Yeah, no, 12:31 a.m. and then up by around 5:36.
So you survive, oh my god, my head's just blown, on like 4 to 5 hours sleep.
Cold brew is my best friend. I can't even do
Oh,
hot cups of coffee because I need it down so fast. So cold brew's been the
you
hero in my life
really,
lately.
you're a
Yeah,
caffeine inhaler. See, I
yeah.
haven't drunk caffeine since July.
I want to get there. I want to get there just because I think it'd be more balance for me. But I think right now it's a crutch I'm going to have to lean on.
It's the build, and here we
Yeah.
are. And I have to get, like, I'm an 8 hours. I just have to have 8 hours. I don't function without it. I am a BITCH in big neon letters, and I am very grateful I do not have sleep. So,
Sure.
but I too,
Something
I too.
something you mentioned really resonated. The what you as a business owner experience versus what friends who don't walk that journey, their perception of it. I recently was talking to one of my friends and he was inviting me on a vacation. He was like, hey, can you do this? We're going to, meet up here on Wednesday and then we'll be there through Wednesday of next week. And I'm like, no, that's like 6 work days for me. He's like, well, you work for yourself. Like, can you put in a time off request? And I'm all like, not granted. Like, I can't justify taking that time off of work. And it's interesting because I think friends look at like, oh, well, like you can just, work whenever you want or, like take vacations whenever. And it's like, sure, I could, but will that accomplish my goals? And so I think sometimes there's like it can be difficult to experience this because if you're going to do it well, you do need to have that diligence and you can't take time off. Most days are 12-14 hour days and is it a requirement? No, I could not work at all, right? But then what I'm building wouldn't be built the way I want it to be built, and so I think there's always that tension there. It's just I love hearing another person talking about it because I don't really talk to as many people who also experience it. So
It is something that's become really highlighted to me, and you likewise, you just hit on something with me, which is, yeah, I can make the choice to step away. I can move things around my diary, and in fact, Ammon and I will go and co-work for 4 weeks together over Christmas and New Year. We'll go to a nice hot location. We will be working because proximity also helps us to achieve more quicker. And we won't be doing traditional client work. We'll be building stuff. But that doesn't mean to say I'm going to be laying on a beach, swimming all day, where I actually wouldn't tell my friends I'm going away to Indonesia, Malaysia to kind of work for 3 weeks because that. So and I could be doing injustice to many people when I say this, but when I've worked in a global role for at least 15 plus years, so I've always managed remote teams. And so when people say to me, work from home, and they do this specifically, work from home means I'm not working. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean by work from home. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, not really. Because I work like a bitch when I'm at home. I work harder. than when I'm at like, I don't have any travel time. I get up, I work, I'm here until whatever time, it's, there's this misconception around, and I think some of my friends still have oh, you're working from away virtually. And that, a little bit, I have to be very patient and blink and just smile and just don't say anything, because I would hurt their feelings, because I'd probably rip their fucking heads off. No, I wouldn't. Joke. No.
It's
But
true
yeah,
though,
that's
yeah.
a very point. It's a very valid point that you also have to surround yourself with people that understand um, your world.
Mhm.
It's very lonely if not.
100%. And I
You
think
have.
that
Sorry, go
ties
ahead.
back
Go
to
on.
your earlier point about community. And I think it's another version of why community is so important,
Yeah.
because the experience can feel very lonely, especially if you're doing it alone. I remember like the earlier days where I didn't have a team and I was just like in my head about all these ideas and like bouncing ideas off myself. And it does feel lonely. And then you have this other loneliness that comes from other people not really understanding your experience. Like you can talk about it with your friends and they'll nod their heads and hey, that sounds tough, but like they don't know, and like that can be another. It can be just another dose of loneliness in that feeling, right? So I think that's part of why I love the work that you do is making connections with people in the community, nurturing those connections, making connections between other people in your community with each other. I think it's so important, and it's very needed.
Totally. And I again, I'm reminded why I started this podcast. And for those of you that are offended a little bit by sort of swearing, then I apologize not to offend an individual, but it is a part of who I am, and I do swear. So if you don't like that, then you might not like working with me, for example. But I would not be swearing in a corporate office. Let me just put that out there. And I do think that one of the beautiful things about working for self is that you do have to really think about your personality and accept so I've got this thing in front of me now. I don't know you're going to be able to see it because it's not, but it says I accept all my quirks and uniqueness, because when you're a business owner, I think more than anything what makes you stand out is being yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and that allows people to magnate towards you. Now, I suppose it might be very different in the sense that you have a specific product that has a service aspect to it, whereas people are working with me for a service, and then there might be a physical aspect at the kind of end of that. But it is something around finding your village, finding your collective, finding the people that really vibe with you, and that is not always a given. And it's not always easy to find those people around you that has such resonance. And I know when I'm working a lot and I think I've worked every weekend for probably the best part of not maybe 6 months. I've done that before. I was absolutely saying I'll never go back to that, but here I am again, because I believe in what I'm doing, like you, and I believe that if I don't do it, somebody else will. So stay awake. It's all happening. Um, but I do think that the cost, you have to really look at what you're trying to achieve and your goals as a business owner, and is it worth, because you do have to graft. And anyone that says, oh, I'm just going to manifest this world into talking without taking any action, you're absolutely delulu, like
Right.
delulu beyond delulu.
Mm-hmm.
And systems and processes are one aspect of it, but you have to take action. You have to
Right.
do the diligence. You have to make connections. You have to be around people. You have to be visible. And I think there's so many things that you need to do as a business owner that no one really ever prepares you for. I don't think anyone can prepare you for. You have to walk the journey and
Right.
find out for yourself.
And I think making mistakes along the way is part of the journey. Is learning from you're making the mistakes, learning from them. I think some of what you just touched on there goes back to, I think, the whole theme of the conversation is like doing your due diligence and not thinking you can manifest your way into success here, right? So I think the
Yeah.
doing the research up front can help make the entire process feel safer, because there's a lot of unknowns that come from building a business since you've never done that before. So as many unknowns as you can get rid of up front will just make your life easier. And I think that that's I come from a product marketing background, and so I love research. I love asking questions. I don't know that that's as natural of a process for at least HR professionals as they move into consulting, is asking, the people in your network, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Is this something you would purchase, or is this a service you would use, or are there people in your network that you think might want fractional support? And I think having those conversations early does two things. One, it validates what you're offering and that there's willingness to pay, but two, you're sort of laying those seeds for the referrals that will drive the early part of your business. And I think that those conversations don't always happen. They might happen when you go and do a LinkedIn announcement, hey, I've launched my consulting business, and then you sit there and wait for the
Yeah.
clients to come, and it doesn't happen right away, and people can get discouraged. And so I think this is where it's like that conversation about, really researching who is my audience, what does that audience want to pay for, what can they afford, is that
Mm.
something I could deliver, how many clients would I need to deliver on that for to make this business make sense and feel viable. And I think that that's such a key part of the launch process. And whether you're selling services, professional services, or you're selling a product, like, you need to have that upfront conversation, because what you think people are going to buy and what they will actually buy are not always the same thing. And you
And
don't want to figure that out on the fly.
you beautiful segue back to full circle. So why Dan Priestley talks about it. For those of you who don't know who Daniel Priestley is, he is an entrepreneur in the space. He offers it's called the Scorecard app. Dent International, Dent Global is his company name, but he's got two books. One is KPI, Key Person of Influence. The other is Oversubscribers. He's got another one. Anyway, what the point of Dan bangs on about is what I flipping love. And he talks about supply and demand. And HR have typically always been on the side of supply. Right. So why does every company, when it needs to draw money back, come to HR and say salaries and benefits, training, learning, development, budget, all budgets, like, strip out? Why? Because in my experience for 25 years, I have heard people piss and moaning in organizations saying that they don't have the growth, they're not given tools, they don't have learning stuff. Then you give it to them and they don't use it. They don't have time to use it. And so, because we've not asked the right questions. So in HR, we've typically come from busyness, busy worker, supply, 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 because we've always had to justify why we exist in an organization. So we do more, we churn out more, and then we're upset when people haven't adopted it or haven't applied it or haven't used it. Because actually what Dan Priestley talks about is demand.
Mm.
Do not do anything. Test your water. Go and do something. Put it in front. Do forums. Get feedback. Do research. See what people are willing to pay for, and they will pay for it by their actually taking action. So create your MVP. Go and get people, paid clients, that will validate your prospect, if you like. And that's what a lot of people don't do. Whether it's a service or a product, irrelevant. It's about that demand. So that's a really beautiful, and I've talked about this a lot before. Unless you've got something which is in high demand, it's not likely to be successful. It's that simple. So if we look at, I've worked in sport a lot. So if you look at sport, they don't go to every athlete in the world, ask them a bunch of questions, and then not listen to them and ask vague questions, because it's a high prospect for them and it's a lot of money. They want to interrogate, they give tools, they give everything. Go
Mm.
test it, go try it, go, lots of people in the public eye get things for free. Why? Because they're tried and tested, so that they'll either rant about it and say how brilliant it is, or they'll
Mm.
say no. But there's a risk there. But there's the demand. That's where the demand is created. So it's a really, really valid point, for anybody that is also coming into a space of consulting or even setting up your own business. Go and prove your business concept first, and be prepared to be open. You might have one feeling about what it looks and feels like, but you're not your ideal client. It's not
Mm.
for you. It's for other people. And I think that we also forget that. Anyway, I went off at a tangent there. Sorry about
No,
that.
I think it's spot on. I think that especially when you look at HR consulting, it can look like so many things. It's a pretty big umbrella, and that means that there's a lot of variability in what HR consulting looks like for you as an individual. And, I know that there's a lot of like, here's what it should look like, or here's what's the best, and that those are general statements that might not actually apply to you. So like, I know a common thing is, as many clients as you possibly can, get them on retainer. And that's like a general rule of thumb, like steady income. I do know some consultants, their bread and butter is just really high volume of employee handbooks. They don't do long form, client
Mm,
relationships. They do tons of project work, but to do that, they need high volume. And so that's
yeah.
where I look at someone who they built a business that sort of flies in the face of some of the standard advice. And she quickly realized that if she was going to build this business where she was doing one off projects for a really large number of clients, she could actually achieve the revenue goals that she set for herself. But she needed to tackle it very differently than other consultants do, right? Hers wasn't a
Mhm.
relationship business, it was a volume business. And I
Right.
think that that's where, she did a really great job of understanding who her ideal client was, what her ideal service was, and then what she needed to do to get there. And I think you need to walk that, you need to have those conversations and ask those questions and be open to the answers that may or may not align with what you went into them hoping they might be.
Yeah, that is the adjustment of what your expectation is and what is actually the reality. I think is such a also valid point. How many of us imagine what our lives will be, what business will be when we get the thing that we want? And sometimes I would say the universe, because I'm a universal kind of gal. I think the universe doesn't always deliver what we want, but what we need. So it's not always in the packaging that we expect it to be. So stay awake. It can all change, and I think being flexible with that is also something else, a skill that not everyone else can do or have. And being able to ebb and flow in what is, and pivoting in business. So what business is today and what HR consultants need today may change, and I think staying nimble to that and having that research really helps that trends. And actually, on that note, I did a survey earlier this year, which you participated in, and I'm going to count on you to participate again. Year on year, I'm going to see what the changes are and add in a few more questions. Then, so we can look at apples, and then there's a couple of outliers, and we'll build on that, because I do think that, I mean, even once a year is too slow. Even once a year is too slow at this point, but it takes an awful lot to get a really good data set.
Mhm.
Actually, talk about that. How many? What's your target of voices to get in your data set? Do you
So
have?
we've been working on a similar type of industry survey, and our goal would be to get to around 200 to 300 HR consultants. I feel like that is the kind of sample size that really gives you a really good look at the industry. And I want to, I think with all of this, as you mentioned, year on year, these things fluctuate, they change. And I think understanding how things evolve is different than just understanding where they are at a single moment. And I really like that you bring that up.
Yeah, it's the pulse, isn't it? The pulse of moving what's happening. I think smart companies, AI is one aspect, but I think being tapped into what's needed, that demand, and being able to respond to that really quickly is the differentiator of what will make or break businesses, I think, in the next few years. I really
100%.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, things are definitely in motion. When I look at, I talk about this a lot with business owners who don't really know what HR is, and I think at least my perspective is that there's like an interesting reason for that. Is HR really wasn't a thing 100 years ago. Like it was at best labor management, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just managing labor, and then once you sort of have the civil rights movement, it's like, oh well, maybe it's keeping people happy on the job because happy workers are more efficient. And it was like,
Right.
oh, okay, great, and then you have talks about company culture, and then now you have this wave of internet and technology to where HR is, yes, people, but also systems. And I think it's been in this constant evolution that it's this role that's really hard to define. And so I think whether you're in-house or you're consulting, really being comfortable with the fact that this is a function within the business that has been in flux since it got started, and it's not that old, and I think it's still getting to know itself and getting to know its place in the business. And now that technology is more embedded, it's even more in flux than before. And so I think just being comfortable with change, and kind of going back to the earlier topic, is doing your research and then
Yeah.
being comfortable with constant learning ever thereafter.
Yeah, you've also hit upon another point, which is so important. Is that I think the one of the things that HR people really struggle with is having data that makes informed decisions. So because it takes it away from the human, but actually these two things need to work simultaneously and harmoniously together. I think that, and I feel that lots of us over time that have a profession, a wisdom, an experience, lived experience, we have a feeling, we have a gut feeling, or we've got some kind of temperature check on. We've seen this, we've done this before, um, and that is a data point. That's also a data point.
Mm.
And I think that we have to get comfortable seeing that data points are qualitative, quantitative, and they come in different forms. But that we should, as HR practitioners, always look for data points, because it will help with decision making. And even the feelings that we have are in fact a data point. They're not excluded from, like, we might think numbers, or drawing a download of a CSV file from we need to download that from us, because we have innate intelligence. And it's when these two things come together that are so important. And I think that lots of HR practitioners don't see it that way. And as I've become a business owner, I see that has actually been one of the biggest data points for me, is being in tune, is being in vibe, feeling there's a movement, feeling that there's something happening, and then quantifying that in some other data to prove, this feeling. As much as it could be esoteric, it could be very unorthodox, but it is that. So I'm here all for it. So I know that we're coming to the end of our chat, which is really,
Mm.
I could sit here all day. In fact, I forget that we're recording. So I suppose, what does the next 6 months look like for Sherlock?
Mm.
Tell us what that looks like, if you
So
can.
I think, as mentioned earlier, our software today is really an operating system for consultants. It's a much more internal tool, and we're looking at how to make Sherlock something that clients can interact with. As you're running a nature consulting business, inevitably, clients are going to be sharing information and documents with you. And if we're pitching you an all-in-one solution, there should be a mechanism for clients to upload information to your workspace to where
Yeah.
you're delivering work. And so we're looking at creating a client portal experience where clients can interface with consultants through our platform. And so that's sort of the next wave for us. And I've already teased the AI component as well. That's something that we're exploring. Making use of the data on our platform so that you can quickly respond and research client information. So a lot of products and features that are in development. So it's a very exciting time for us.
Oh my God, it so is. And I guess I always have FOMO when it comes to development and product of tech. So I love it. I'm here for it. And I sit slightly on a different side now, but it sounds very exciting. I'm so thrilled you were able to spend the time with me today.
Absolutely,
I
anytime.
I always love it, and thank you. If you want to connect with Dominic, so information will be in the description in the YouTube. Obviously, you can find Dominic and connect. I really, 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 really am excited for Sherlock and its potential. It's great now, and it will only always move better and better and better, because that the types of activities you're doing are driving that to become better. So thank you so much for spending time with me
Thank
today.
you.
And
This
thank
was such a
you.
pleasure.
And I will no doubt speak to you very soon. And I'll say goodbye, and then I'm going to see you in the waiting room before you go. So thank you
All
so much
right.
for
Thank
joining
you so
us
much
today
for
at
having
ZED
me.
Talk.
Yes.
And we thank you very much indeed. Bye for now.
Bye.